we had the problem in the early days of Genesis that Peter Gabriel tended to end up with, almost as if he was the band, and the rest of us sort of stood and watched him, and to some extent it's heading up a bit like that with Phil because of his success on his own. It can't avoid doing that. And it'd be nice to try and I think it would really help if either Mike or I would have some kind of success outside the band, just to try and get that position slightly rectified again, because, the band has always been a kind of cooperative effort, if you like, with everybody feeling that they're equally responsible for the result. And it would be nice if people, could actually realise that. As a group, we're anything but serious, and there's no way we could have lived together even given the various lineup changes we've had, the three members of the band as they are now have been together now for 13 years. And there's no way that we could actually sort of tolerate each other if we didn't have a pretty good sort of humorous relationship, and make it all light. But we do take our attitude to our music is serious, no doubt about that. We take a lot of trouble over it. I think it works very well. I think Phil, really found a nice way of doing it, I think. Certainly on the best of the songs that use that kind of idea. But my own preference was for the songs probably of his, which weren't so personal. Ones which are sort of slightly more, you can take away from the personality, like In the Air Tonight, which I think is far away the best song he's done on his own.
With the last few albums, the titles have grown up with the music. With Duke, we had Duke as a working title for a section of music that eventually got split up. And then with Abacab, that was a working title for that tune, and we just figured it was a nice word, so we'll keep it and use that as a title for the album. But this time, we didn't really have anything like that. Tony thought Genesis 14 was quite a good idea, because it's the 14th album, and I quite liked the idea of that too. But Mike wasn't too keen on it, and obviously we've all got to get excited by it. So
I just thought it'd be funny to sort of suddenly bring out a number out of the blue, suddenly some people think, they really made that many. We're finding no particular title was coming very easy for us on this one, and so we thought that we'd never called an album Genesis. We felt that because every track was group written, and we really everybody felt very strongly about it, and we just felt it'd be nice, therefore, to sort of try and present that unity, if you like, with the name Genesis. So that's why we called it that this time. As anyone, I think, who's worked in groups and things will know, that what's difficult is to get that first idea that sparks off something. And it may just be a repeated riff. But once you've got that, how the rest of the sort of song can come so easily. And I think Mike's very good at providing that sort of initial spark sometimes. When perhaps things are a bit there's not much happening in the room, and he'll sit down and he'll just sort of play something, and you think, hey, that's good. And you start to sort of just play with him, and something develops.
Right. Tony Banks.
For Genesis, the music has always been the most important thing. The lyrics have, I think, in every single case, virtually, been written after the basic music has been written. And I think we felt with Mama, because of the kind of vocal we wanted from it, it needed something that Phil could really get his sort of tongue round.
From London, the third and final hour of this exclusive profile of a band and the solo aspirations of its individual members. We've already heard from Mike Rutherford and Phil Collins, so now we turn the focus of our attentions to writer and keyboard player Tony Banks, whose latest solo album is The Fugitive, and whose writing credits include film soundtracks as well as the music of Genesis. And here is Tony Banks.
There's lots of music I like, and I like lots of very direct kind of music. Some of my most favourite of Genesis music over the last few years have been songs like Turn It On Again and Duchess, which were both on the Duke album, and obviously Abacab itself, which are all very sort of straight things. And it's the same motivation all round. It's just you've got things to write and things to say, and there isn't really enough within one group, particularly when you're making one album every sort of 18 months, 2 years. Even if we did sort of divide it up into sort of solo tracks or something, you still wouldn't get more than about sort of 15 minutes each on an album. And if you consider yourself to be writers, that's not very much, I could write enough for about 4 albums a year, on my own, I'm sure, if I had the outlets for it. We've had so much luck and success with Genesis that I don't really resent the fact, particularly, that we don't get it anywhere else. I mean, it's just that everything you try for, you like to be liked. I mean, it's as simple as that. And so when you try something and it doesn't seem to be going that well, you sort of you get depressed by it. But I mean, the fact that Genesis has been, you know, I mean, since Selling England by the Pound, every single album we've done has made, say, the top 10 anyhow in England, except for The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which didn't quite. But just about every album has made the top 10 in the last 10 years. I mean, that's an amazing situation. You know, not many bands have been able to do that, and I think we're very lucky for that. But obviously, you know, whatever situation you're in, you're going to find things that you feel could be better about it.
It's an illusion. It's a game. A reflection of someone else's name. When you wake in the morning, where you can find it covered in cellophane. Well, there's a hole in the somewhere. Yeah, there's a hole in the somewhere. Baby, there's a hole in the somewhere. Now there's a hole in the somewhere.
Abacab from the album of the same name. For Genesis guitarist Mike Rutherford, the contribution brought to the group by Tony Banks is very specific.
He brings a subtlety that I haven't got. I mean, I'm happy on 3 chords, and I can make 3 chords sound good, probably in a way he can't. But he brings a complexity to Genesis, which is good, I think, which is important. It's part of what we are. And we combine with Phil to make something in the middle, which is probably quite good.
Perhaps I'm a sort of contradiction. I'm quite happy to be, in terms of stage performance and things, of being a background member, because I feel I'm not a natural kind of flamboyant performer and everything. I'm first and foremost a writer of music, and I just want to have as many outlets as possible for it. And if I could do things, solo albums, which in my particular case there's no real intention to perform them live or anything, they're totally a studio offering, I could probably fit things like that in between every Genesis album virtually, and the sort of thing I really would like to do. But that particular avenue hasn't proved to be that successful, I suppose. And so I mean, I'm looking at other ways of doing music as well, like the film world. And that seems to sort of work slightly better because you've got a definite outlet for film music, because the film, hopefully, I mean, will get a release. And it means that some of your music will actually be heard by someone. I wrote with Mike a long time ago, well, about 3 or 4 years ago now, a film called The Shout, where we were brought in right at the last minute, in fact, to write a theme tune for it. And we wrote a theme tune for it, and then we also wrote some other little bits of music. And I thought the way the incidental music was used was quite effective, actually, but the actual way the main theme was used was terrible. It was never actually heard in its entirety at all. It was just something totally different to do, and I enjoyed doing it for that reason. And of course, with The Wicked Lady, it was another thing altogether, because there was a much bigger project, you know, involved writing all the incidental music and having very tight time cues and everything, and also working with an orchestra, which I had to work obviously through an arranger, because I can't orchestrate myself. But it was a whole new challenge, and it's something I really enjoyed doing. The film it's not a classic film. I think it's a fun film. I think it works quite well, but I think the music actually really suited it. It was very apt, and I think it made the film a lot better too, which after all is the main job of film music. And also I think the main theme that I wrote for it was a very strong piece of music. And it, you know, on the particular, we did do a soundtrack album. There's 2 or 3 versions of it on that, and I think it stands up quite well to all the different treatments it was given. I just did it on I got an 8-track Brennell machine here, and I just put it down on that, multi-tracking with myself. It relates slightly more, if you like, to some of the music I did on A Curious Feeling, my first solo album, with the instrumental music on that, which for some people, you know, of the people who bought that album, I think for many people the best thing about it they felt was the instrumental music on it. And so this was a chance to sort of explore that avenue a little bit further.
Tony Banks music for the soundtrack of The Wicked Lady. And he'll be back in a moment with another track from the album Genesis. It's 3 into 1, and here's Tony Banks.
What I do best is just play and write, you know. And I think in a group nowadays you have to have the different roles within the group. You have the performers, the showmen, the people who can do that side of it, and the people who kind of more background, who can write the stuff and arrange the stuff and, be more solid on that end of it. Some people are good at all of it. I think we managed to, on this one, to get some of the directness we got with Abacab, perhaps with slightly more of the emotion of some of our earlier albums, with a little bit more of the drama of, particularly a song like Mama and also Home by the Sea, which is on the same side, are very strong kind of emotional pieces, I feel. And I think it's a really nice way we were able to, on every single one of these songs, to feel that the song was created in the room with all three of us being present, and the fact that all three of us were present was always important. I'm probably closest to what is my favourite song, which is Mama, which is the single. I think it's a very strong, emotional piece. And it was the sort of thing that came together quite easily, really. The drum, so basically building around a drum box rhythm of Mike's, and then just playing these kind of chords on top of it, linking up the drum machine to one of the keyboards so that it played a pulse all the way through it. So all I changed the chords, but the rhythm of it was decided by the drum machine. And just going for a sort of very atmospheric kind of feel. And then it's a sort of perfect kind of backcloth for Phil's, the way that he seems to be singing so well at the moment. Very forceful, sort of soulful kind of singing, that's my favourite way he sings. But I really like most of the songs in this album an awful lot.
Silver Rainbow is a romantic lyric. Tony wrote the lyric to that. Not romantic lovey-dovey, but lush sort of lyrics. And Tony does those better than certainly I do. The thing was originally called Adam because, again, working title, you see, rhythmically we felt it was a bit like Adamant, which is before I got asked to produce him, which is quite an extraordinary coincidence. And so we thought we'd write the lyric, a kind of juvenile lyric, to go with the sort of the juvenile feel of the music. Working titles can give a lot away, actually. As to what it's about, it's really from the head of the writer, so it's best to ask him.
Well, is this phrase, Beyond the Silver Rainbow, sort of came to me when I was trying to find something to sing over it. And the idea of doing a kind of rather tongue-in-cheek sort of juvenile kind of song. The idea of sort of people going senseless when they're in love, if you like, which is what it's all about. The song had a very definite straight pop feel, I thought. Particularly the sort of the drumming and everything on it was very sort of straight. And it just seemed a sort of nice approach, a different approach, something I hadn't tried before.
Rivers flow uphill, blue turns into grey. You won't know if you're coming or going. Beyond the silver rainbow, you won't know if you're coming or going.
I like writing lyrics, but I'm in this business because I write music and I love everything to do with music. But I also like songs. And I just enjoy inventing. Some lyrics come quite easily and I really enjoy doing that. Over the years, there have been various songs where we've used stories, which I've written the lyrics for. What's crazy to me is that I can write a song, say, on a Genesis album, on my own, like Me and Sarah Jane, or which was on Abacab, or anything you like, and it gets sort of like such a big audience to listen to it. And then I can write a song that I think is, say, way superior to that, and have it on a solo album. And yet, of course, the audience is not there at all, because no one's really is interested enough to go out and sort of even listen to it, let alone buy it. And I understand the reason for that. There's so much stuff around that you can't be expected to listen to everything there is, and there's no particular reason why there's nothing, I don't have anything else that's kind of going to make people listen to things apart from the music itself.
I am the singer of the group. If I was the drummer of the group and I'd never sung with the group, then maybe it would have been just as hard for me. It's down to personalities as well, I am more of an outgoing personality than someone like Tony is. Musically, of course, that's irrelevant as to how, it's a question of what you write when you're on your own. And we sit down and say, well, why was In the Air? Tony said In the Air he knew it was going to be a massive hit. I didn't. It only just made it on the album for me. I'm very disappointed for him that Tony's album didn't do as well as it should have done, because I think, we talked about yesterday, Fugitive, I think that it's a much better album than anybody would give him credit for, knowing that he came from Genesis. And I think that's sad, to be honest, that things get judged on what you've done before. And it's the old box with the lid going down. You have to get a crane to get the lid open again.
When I was writing the song Moving Under on the album, I had a third verse, which I tried singing, and I didn't like it. And so I wrote a new third verse. And while I was writing it, the idea of the Fugitive, the old TV program Fugitive, has been quite a good idea of sort of representing the kind of person I was trying to get across in the song. And then when I thought about it, I thought it really represented quite well sort of a lot of the ideas on the album could be related back to this one idea. I mean, being a sort of solo album by a group member. And also, I think I quite like the thing about not being totally visible as well. I would never be the sort of person who could be put right front in the limelight, whatever I was doing. For me, I'd always be just off-centre, if you like. And I think The Fugitive was, for that reason, represented my attitude to it quite well as well.
Into the night, but out of the dark, to be cornered and yet to survive. But just to perform with his body scorned, with his voice he amused and a little confused, his masters the king and queen. Moving under, moving under, moving under, moving under.
From his solo album The Fugitive, Moving Under by Tony Banks.
I was looking for something that I felt that I could sing for a start, and that meant I had to keep it sort of slightly simpler, and the lyrics I had to keep a bit simpler. I didn't want to have to get my tongues around some of the things that I've asked Pete and Phil to sing in the past, The music I've written isn't, in some ways, structurally isn't as different as all that. It's just the fact that I tend to, on The Fugitive, I've tended to sort of stay on one bit and use it as a kind of verse and have a chorus and things, more than I perhaps have done in the past, where I'm quite often happy to sort of use a bit once or twice, almost like a throwaway, and then go on to something else, So that makes it appear more poppy, I think. But also I think my sort of particular vocal approach and everything has tended to make it appear like that. I was quite pleased with the sort of the vocal performance on a couple of tracks, because I really never tried vocals before, and this is the first time I've ever tried it. When I heard my voice coming back from a loudspeaker, I would tend to cringe and things. And I don't know, having worked on it for a bit and obviously using some of the studio gimmicks and everything, I was quite pleasantly surprised with the fact that, I could feel at least that I was heading somewhere with it. And obviously there's a lot of things wrong with it, but I felt it sort of showed promise. Because that's the one thing about the solo albums I've done. I mean, it's not as if my life depended on it, you know what I mean? It's kind of always been a sidetrack thing, and therefore I'm able to put, as much energy into it as I like, and no more. Whereas if it was the only thing I had, I obviously would go all out for it. And it might make a difference. It just might.
Here am I, lost in a world behind me. All alone, just like before you found me. Do what you want, do what you want. You've got to be what you want. Be what you want. You've got to.
This is Love from Tony Banks. And after this, we'll be back with another track from the album Genesis. You're listening to 3 into 1. And before we return to Tony Banks, it's Phil Collins who reminds us that whatever the importance of solo work, there's something special about working together within Genesis.
Really, the only reason, to keep the band going is because it's a band, and so therefore let's write as a group, bounce ideas off each other. And there's a great feeling, when that moment when someone starts tuning up and sort of slips into something, and the drum machine or myself goes into a certain thing, and there's a bit of chemistry and sparklights, and therefore you think you can't do this on your own, can you? Because it's a group.
We mutually agree who's going to write what lyric, because we don't write lyrics together at all. We tend to write the lyrics apart. But obviously once we come back into the room, there might be a lot of modification of what's there. In order to write a lyric, I kind of write a story and then have the lyric kind of around it, and hopefully have enough of the story in the lyric so that people know what you're on about. I just find it easier than writing. I'm not very good at writing just straight love songs or sort of abstract things, or at least I'm only sort of starting to learn how to do that, I feel. I find it difficult, though, to keep the lyric quite simple enough. I still try and sort of build perhaps too much into it. I'm happier with the kind of sort of story-type lyrics and things, and I think the longer songs you can kind of make more of if you do that. I quite wanted to write Home by the Sea because I felt it had a lot of scope. It's a sort of ghost story kind of thing. The idea of these ghosts living in a house. What you start off with actually is a robber. He's going to try and burgle this house. And he gets in there and it's all going fine. He gets in through the window and everything. And once he gets in there, he suddenly realizes the place is filled with ghosts. And they sort of, throughout the song, they start to tell him their lives before they ended up there and how they ended up there, in fact.
We had two pieces. We had Home by the Sea, which was an improvised line. I mean, I was singing, home by the sea, home by the sea. And we just liked, the words fitted the tune, which all came in. It was just one of those things, you open your mouth and you sing it. And so the actual idea for the lyric probably came from that one spark, Then we had a second piece, which we called Heavy Simmons, because I was using Simmons drums, which could have gone anywhere with any track. It could have been on its own. But we just thought, well, maybe it could be linked with Home by the Sea, and maybe at the end of Heavy Simmons we could have a reprise of Home by the Sea. So, it just rounds itself off.
The idea of the instrumental parts is that they were sort of like the kind of former lives of the various ghosts as they were telling him his stories. It's a very loose sort of way of doing it, but I mean, you've had to do it many times throughout our existence of trying to find a kind of justification, if you like, for instrumental pieces that were written without any lyric having been written in the first place.
Home by the sea, home by the sea, home by the sea, home by the sea. As we relive our lives in what we tell you.
Home by the Sea, the longest track on the album Genesis. And we'll have more from Tony Banks after this. It's the final segment of 3 into 1, and Tony Banks looks to the relationship between singles and albums.
Unfortunately, the thing about albums is, like anything else, apart from maybe a single, they probably won't have heard much of it before they buy it. And so you're not really getting a totally accurate assessment of what people think of the album by its sales. In many ways, you're getting an assessment of what they thought of the previous album, in lots of ways. I think perhaps in America you get it because they play rather more than just the one song on the radio and things. Perhaps people do hear a few more than that. And obviously people who come to shows and then go out and buy the album, I suppose, are hearing a bit more, and so they know what's going on. I'm more apprehensive about Tony Banks' album because I reckon the chances are that it's not going to do anything, and so you're hoping that it's going to. I mean, I don't really care what's released as a single. As far as I'm concerned, it's a trailer for an album in many ways. And I felt very confident about lots of the Fugitive album. And you played it around to people, and most of the people at the record company said, well, there's not really an obvious single on it. I thought, oh, God, here we go. It's one of these. And I was equally proud of any of the songs in the album. I didn't really mind what people wanted to release. My feeling about singles was just my attitude to the album and how I sort of felt about them, and just people around me, what they were thinking as well. Everyone went for a song which I had never really considered as a single, which was This Is Love, which I just never saw it as a single. I thought it was a nice song. I just felt it didn't really have a hook. I thought that the other song, The Wheels Keep Turning, was a far better, more obvious choice.
For this 3-hour special, we've let the members of Genesis speak for themselves, of their solos, their songs, and above all, their group. Their tour of America lies ahead, together with more songwriting, production, and performance, the substance of 3 into 1, which was produced in London by reliable source. From me, Alan Freeman, my thanks to you for listening, and to Mike Rutherford, Phil Collins, and Tony Banks for giving us the music of Genesis.
Stay with me, my love. I hope you'll always be right here.